These days, the skills of ancient craftsmen are hard to find. But in today's Wide World program, we've discovered some modern craftsmen who are keeping alive their age-old traditions. Firstly, to the Philippines and the Baguio region of central Luzon. In these remote hills, the Ifugao tribesmen carve life-size wooden statues that have made them famous throughout the world. The name Ifugao means from the mountains, and these isolated people are descended from the island's earliest settlers. In the wood-carving villages, everyone takes part, but the father is always in charge. The Ifugao used to carve to please their ancient gods. Simply made, with hand tools, their carvings were made as a tribute to the god of rain, in thanks for a good harvest. Sometimes smaller ones were made as amulets to ward off evil spirits. Even though Christianity came to the Baguio region during the last century, many Ifugao still believe in their old gods and spirits. The wood used by the Ifugao is acacia. Because acacia is a softwood, only simple carving tools are needed. But great skill and patience are essential. Because whatever is chipped away can never be put back again. The larger-than-life statues vary greatly. These warriors are a favorite with the Ifugao and suggest clashes with the Spanish centuries ago. But musicians and domestic animals are also popular themes. In the past, the Ifugao carved for themselves, but today, a combination of tourist demand and economic pressure have put their work on a more commercial basis. Workshops like this one now produce carvings for markets overseas, and what was once an act of religious devotion is now an important way of making a living. This carver gets about $100 for a life-size figure. Of course, it may sell for 10 times that amount in Europe or the United States. The demand for Ifugao carving is steadily growing, and it's not hard to see why. Their work remains sensitive and expertly crafted. The life-sized figures are particularly sought after because they show, perhaps best of all, the freshness and artistry of their wood sculpture. But what of the future for the Ifugao? Well, there's a fine line that divides handicrafts from tourist trinkets. And until now, the Ifugao woodcarvers have maintained their artistry. So let's hope that greedy middlemen and thoughtless tourists won't ever spoil one of the most delightful crafts to be found in the whole of the Pacific region. From the Philippine highlands to the French Riviera. That's quite a jump. But like the Ifugao, the work of this craftsman and his wife is founded in the natural world about them. Jean and Jacqueline Mailly are no ordinary beachcombers. On the contrary, they're working, looking for ideas. You see, they're goldsmiths, and in their hands, these ordinary-looking pebbles will be transformed into, well, this time, they've become very exclusive paperweights. This is the Mailly's country house. They like to work here, far from the bustle of Paris. Jean Mailly's reputation for handmade jewelry reaches from France to America and the Middle East. But it all starts here, with a pile of gold bars, and an empty sketch pad. Both Jean and his wife seek inspiration from primitive art. Jean's design for a belt buckle is transferred onto squared paper, which acts as a scale blueprint. The next step is to make the base, so Jean cuts a disc from sheet gold. The walls of Jean's workshop show he's an avid collector of antique goldsmithing tools. Of course, the blowtorch is a modern aid, but it gives Jean the precision he's looking for. And carefully used, that blowtorch produces stylized figures from cutout shapes. Here comes the hard part. Jean needs concentration as well as a steady hand to braze on the figures without melting them. The gold buckle's almost finished, but Jean wants to make sure the figures are a uniform thickness, so he puts it through an old metal press. As the buckle is buffed clean, any gold powder is collected by a vacuum device underneath the machine. It's far too valuable to waste, even in minute quantities. Finished. And now complete with the famous Mailly signature. Like her husband, Jacqueline uses the blowtorch as an artist uses a paintbrush. Here, she's sculpting in molten gold the limbs for a tiny figure made from twisted gold wire. Both Jean and Jacqueline work gold like ancient craftsmen. There's no molding or casting. And even though you'll see symbols and patterns repeated, no piece of jewelry is the same as another. After careful buffing, the gold figure begins to take on a more delicate appearance. Even laborious jobs like this one have a certain glamour when the raw material is gold. This is how a gold chain is crafted. First, wire is wound around a former. Then, Jacqueline snips off the loops and ends up with a pile of rings. Once they've been joined, the ends of each link must be fused together. Another job for that useful blowtorch. It takes several hundred hammer blows to perfect the shape of a single link, and endless patience to ensure that all links match each other. The Maillys live and work with gold, so it's natural they should spend their evenings talking about it. This is one of their bigger projects. It's a model for a statuette that will be made out of 24-karat gold and weigh more than 200 ounces. Like most craftsmen, Jean and Jacqueline have their favorite pieces which they can't bear to sell. Usually they're items that have marked a new stage in the development of their art. This miniature boot is one of Jacqueline's favorites. She's almost turned gold into leather. And this they call strolling figures. If you were one of those people who prefers to see gold on your table than around your neck, then you should visit the workshop of Christopher Lawrence. He's a master gold and silversmith from London, and he's won Britain's Craftsman of the Year award 3 times. Christopher Lawrence caters for the rich and famous, and his commissions range from boudoir boxes to a gold bath. Whatever Christopher is asked to make, he tries to turn it into a thing of beauty. He says it's his contribution to the ancient art of goldsmithing. We asked him which was his favorite piece.
Well, this piece here, actually, which I call my gold pumpkin, I think it's necessary as a craftsman to always set oneself as many problems, and by doing this you try and achieve as much as you can, of course. And as I say, I call it my gold pumpkin because in fact it is based vaguely on the pumpkin shape, and it's made out of 18-karat gold using different colors: white here, yellow, red, and white on the body. And what I'll do, if I shall open it, it opens in this way, and I'll tell you the story as we go through, because somewhere here are 2 hidden catches, which I shall find. One is this flower here, which moves up, and opposite another one. Having moved those up, I can then lift the lid off. And inside, another gold container, which I lift out.
It all seems very heavy.
It is incredibly heavy, actually, because, of course, gold is.
How much gold would you say is in there?
There's about 250 ounces of 18-karat gold in here. Now, this piece, you see, is made of green gold, and again, hidden catches to open it, because there is another container inside.
What about this here? Surely you didn't make that?
Yes, there are 900 links in there, and every link is made by hand and fitted together. So, in fact, it is completely flexible, rather like a piece of cloth. And I'll illustrate this when I can take it off. See, that is absolutely as flexible as a piece of thin cloth. We've now got to this box, which is made of red gold with white strapping. As you can see, this is quite a severe design as against the other. I felt that one had to stop now visually and come against something which was
more
quite
practical.
Different. That's right. Now again, this does in fact open. I've given it this cage-like appearance because it shows that something's inside. And when I can find the doors, again we have a hidden catch, and what I do with my finger, I push the bottom and the 2 doors open. Then finally inside is in fact a perfume bottle.
We're in the German city of Mainz to find our final craft, printing. Why Mainz? Well, it was here that Johannes Gutenberg set up the first printing press more than 500 years ago. In this printing museum, you'll find the world's first bestseller, Gutenberg's Bible. It only ran to 188 copies because Gutenberg went bankrupt. Today, only 22 copies have survived, and they're priceless. Well, almost. The last one to come onto the market sold for nearly £2 million sterling. This is the museum's working reconstruction of Gutenberg's original printing press in Mainz. But he invented more than just a press. Firstly, there was the hand mold which made possible the precision casting of type in large quantities. And for the mold, Gutenberg developed a suitable metal alloy. It was probably lead with tin and antimony. It had to solidify quickly without distorting the molded letters. Each metal letter was slotted into a wooden former to make up a line of type. And it was this that made Gutenberg's invention revolutionary. Of course, we know that the Koreans and the Chinese had made printed books centuries before Gutenberg, but they'd used wooden blocks with only one block to a page. There were also individual ceramic typefaces, but they tended to break too easily. So it was Gutenberg who finally invented a movable type that could be used over and over again. Another of Gutenberg's developments was a suitable oil-based printing ink. The press itself was less of an invention than an adaptation. Many similar presses were being used in Europe by papermakers and bookbinders. But it was the combination of all Gutenberg's ideas that sparked off a revolution in communication. And that's one revolution that shows no sign of ending, even today. Printing has come a long way since the 15th century. Sadly, though, Gutenberg died a poor man. But within 30 years of his death, there were more than 10 million printed books throughout Europe alone. The West Germans are naturally proud of Johannes Gutenberg's contribution to printing. So much so, in fact, that 2 German publishers have decided to reproduce Gutenberg's original Bible. A skilled team of artists has been brought together in Zurich. They're experts in the delicate art of manuscript illumination, the colorful drawings that decorate each page. The publishers decided to print their Gutenberg Bible using the most up-to-date photographic methods of reproduction. But it's printed on paper specially made by hand in Holland. There'll be some more expensive versions on parchment, and about 30 Bibles will be printed on vellum. That's a finer version of parchment made from calf or kidskin. And they'll cost a staggering 100,000 Deutschmarks, or about 25,000 pounds sterling. No wonder they're being claimed as the most expensive books in the world. The original copies did vary, especially in the illuminations which were done by hand on each copy. This facsimile edition is based on the copy in the State Museum in Berlin, which contains 100 miniatures and is considered to be the best illuminated of all the surviving copies. Although machines make much of the work quicker, the process of binding still has to be done by hand to retain the quality of the original. The ball of wax you can see being used is a kind of lubricant for the binding cord. It'll also help the pages turn more easily when the book is finished. It's this kind of slow, painstaking work that was typical of book printing in the mid-15th century. Slow or not, this was the time when new ideas were in the air, and the number of people who could read was steadily growing. In one sense, Gutenberg was the catalyst for this learning boom. He found a way of providing the public with the books it demanded, and at prices that soon became a fraction of the handwritten originals. Decorating the leather cover is another process that's been left to the traditional skills of the craftsman. A whole set of new stamping tools had to be created if they were to keep faith with the original cover design. And they're the same designs that Gutenberg used 500 years ago. This time it was decided to copy the designs from a different Gutenberg Bible kept in the Fulda Museum in West Germany. That's because the decoration on the Fulda edition was thought to be superior to the Berlin Bible. This tool is heated electrically, but that's the only concession to modern technology. The skill of this modern bookbinder depends on a steady eye and an acute sense of proportion. One slip here, one tiny error in deciding where to bring down that stamp, and hundreds of pounds worth of fine leather binding would be ruined. It's exquisite craftsmanship, and quite clearly a modern work of art. After the leather binding has been decorated, there's only the brass fittings to be added. Even here, everything's been minutely copied from the old Fulda edition. The finished Bible, and it runs to only 885 copies. But there's an ironic twist to this story. Here's an exclusive and expensive book, one that only a handful of people can afford. Yet the original creator, Johannes Gutenberg, was trying to achieve the very opposite. He wanted to move away from craftsmanship and into mass production, to make books cheaper and accessible to everyone. Well, he certainly achieved that goal. And this expensive book is proof that ancient craftsmanship will never die.